One of these films helped pioneer the slasher rulebook that would guide the horror genre through the late 70s and 80s. Another of these films updated the story for the early 21st century, brimming with violence and gore to match an era filled with darkness and torture porn. The last of these films shifted its focus and added a feminist spin on the tale. It was produced by the unstoppable Blumhouse machine, but has, only a year after its release, already gotten lost in the shuffle. But which of these films is the best? The premise of the original Black Christmas is delightfully uncomplicated. While preparing for the imminent Christmas holidays, a sorority house is targeted by a disturbing anonymous prank caller. It quickly becomes apparent that this is no innocent game, as housemates begin to disappear, and despite what people keep saying, they haven't just gone home for Christmas break. It was based in part on a popular urban legend dating back to the 1960s. The creepy campfire tale of a babysitter who receives repeated phone calls from a strange voice telling her to check on the kids upstairs. Tensions continue to rise, peaking when she discovers the calls are coming from within the house. This legend was rewritten to take place in a college setting during Christmas, allegedly due to a brutal murder case that occurred during the holiday season in the filmmaker's native Canada. Director Bob Clark came up with the gleefully dark name, Black Christmas. Setting the film's murder spree during the holidays accidentally helped set a precedent for slashers to come. Every holiday, no matter how big or small, was tarnished by this bloody brush. Halloween, My Bloody Valentine, April Fool's Day, New Year's Evil, Easter Bunny, kill, and so on. Black Christmas also helped cement the killer's POV as a recurring tactic for the genre. This technique is most effective in the film's prolonged opening. We watch through the killer's eyes as he creeps on a house, sneaks inside, and ultimately commits a horrible murder. Unlike Halloween, which borrowed this idea but ran the scene to appear as one continuous shot, Black Christmas's POV is repeatedly interrupted. The killer's progression into the house cuts away to spend time introducing our characters, who are enjoying one last party before the holiday. This works well, the tension is extended, and watching these likeable characters having a good time up close adds a lot of dread. We know one of these partygoers will wind up dead before long. It's a slasher film after all. We can safely presume it will be one of the girls. But beyond that, for a while, it's anyone's guess. It ends up being 12 minutes before the first kill occurs, which feels unusually restrained for this type of film. Before that initial kill, our main set of girls are established, with their differences in character clear from the off. Barb is the loudmouth life of the party, and the most liberal, always with a drink or a cigarette in hand, or both. She's joking about, she's sexually open.
Could you give me the number at the sorority house?
It's, Fellatio 20880.
Claire is the quiet, sensitive one. Jess is proactive but hiding a secret, later revealed to be an unwanted pregnancy. And Phil is the friendly glue holding them together, acting as a neutral buffer when things get a bit heated. This opening also gives us the first of the film's many harassing phone calls, for which the film is famous. In contrast to the silent slasher icons like Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, this unseen killer doesn't want to shut up. The voice is unhinged, erratic, often employing multiple voices, and the things he says are shockingly vulgar, even by today's standards.
Let me lick your pretty big cunt.
The girls' reactions to these phone calls solidifies their characters. Barb plays it off as one big joke, while Claire is understandably terrified.
I'll stick my tongue up your pretty pussy.
You fucking creep!
I'm going to kill you.
Not only did I not know who was going to be bumped off during this scene, I also didn't immediately know who the final girl would be, which was refreshing. Barb was getting the most screen time, so she was a strong contender for final girl, yet her constant alcohol abuse and dismissal of the phone call indicated a violent and untimely death was just around the corner. Meanwhile, you could be forgiven for thinking the main character would be Claire, being the quiet and scared virgin type. It's easy to see a version where she watches all her friends get systematically murdered until her fear is replaced by action. But no, After the call, she goes upstairs alone to pack, and then, you know. Bob Clark creates a very simple but effective kill. The tension has been ratcheting up for 10 minutes now, so even a scene as small as a girl suspiciously checking her closet is overflowing with suspense. When the murder finally happens, we are placed back in that POV, which is an uncomfortable place to be, to say the least. These first 12 minutes are indicative of Black Christmas as a whole. Slowly paced, kills are far and few between, several of which happen off-screen. Blood and gore is surprisingly minimal. There are no gratuitous sex scenes or pointless points of nudity where a college girl checks herself out in the mirror. The soundtrack is low-key, the film as a whole is quiet and understated. The iconic highlights, the killer POVs, and unsettling phone calls are used sparingly, while there are a number of creepy imagery and clever, but again understated editing tricks.
Are you awake?
As scary as the film is, it also has a good sense of humour.
Ho, 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 shit.
My favourite moment of comedy comes from the sorority house's keeper, Mrs. Mack, who is established as hiding a bottle of liquor in a book. That's fine, I thought. Whatever, a little character thing. 5 minutes later, however, she goes upstairs to brush her teeth, and ever so casually pulls out another identical bottle from a chest to use as mouthwash. But we ain't here for the comedy. There is something genuinely creepy about this film, and for me, it comes down to the nature of the villain and the film's final moments. In a twist that I am ashamed to admit caught me off guard, Jess and the police think her boyfriend Peter was behind the calls and the murders. And why not? The guy was fucking crazy. But Peter is defeated. Jess is recovering asleep in bed. Everything calms down. We're just waiting for the credits now. But they never come. The camera moves along the dark halls and blood-stained rooms. A frosty wind howls outside. All else is quiet. Until floorboards begin to creak. A quiet, ominous music stab. And then Billy the killer up in the attic, still alive, still unseen, quietly singing to himself.
Agnes, it's me, Billy.
We slowly move outside, lingering on this dark, twisted version of what should be a comforting Christmas time image. Throughout the film, the phone calls would indicate another murder. As we sit in silence looking at this house, the phone rings again. Now that's how you end a fucking horror film. Never truly revealing Billy is one of the film's greatest attributes. Hints at a crazed backstory are dropped piecemeal during the phone call rants, but are never plainly laid out. The wild nature of the killer's adaptive unhinged voice was achieved through various voice actors, with one such actor standing on his head to really twist his voice. The unknown is almost always going to be more terrifying, as this series of films proves. But yeah, Bob Clark spends 90 minutes ruining your Christmas basically. He made up for it a decade later, kind of, by directing A Christmas Story. Oh, and B-movie king John Saxon is great as the helpful sheriff, who is strangely competent again for a slasher film. To sum up the 1974 film, its strengths come from the quiet and understated nature. I wonder if the remake will be the same. Fuck. I avoided the 2006 remake like the plague for over a decade. I had never heard a single good word said about it. But as the weather outside became chilly, the leaves fell away and died, and the frost settled all around, I figured it was time to see for myself. Right away I understood people's issues with the film. Everything I like about the original and its subdued mysterious nature is tossed aside for the sake of a very quick-paced gore fest, with a new emphasis on the villains and a sprinkling of titaes. Comparing the first 15 minutes of both films should showcase my point. In 1974, we are treated to a slow and tense build-up to one important kill, and its aftermath that will weigh heavy over the remainder of the entire film to come. In 2006, in that very same space of time, we are treated to not one, but 4 deaths, and a little doggy style. To put that further in perspective, That's more on-screen kills in the first 15 minutes than the original had in the entire film. There's plenty more kills to come later though, don't you worry. This film is never far from producing a big old chunky splatter of crimson all through the house. It should be mentioned that the film does have a particular obsession with eyeballs. Real eyeballs, fake eyeballs, screensaver eyeballs, ripping out eyeballs, stabbing eyeballs, eating eyeballs. I get that Black Christmas plays into the whole voyeur thing, with the point of view camera work and that one great look at Billy that we actually get in the original, but the remake takes it to a whole nother level. Billy is now like some super version of Norman Bates, with little peepholes all over the house. Hey, Billy, if you're trying to be sneaky, you don't think someone's going to notice all the tiles that are suddenly displaced? You can't put them back, you're stuck down there, you prick. Yeah, we should talk about Billy, really. Remember how I adored the lack of Billy's backstory, motivation, or even seeing the guy in the original film? Yeah, no, fuck that, I guess. Black Christmas 2006 goes whole roasted hog and delves deep into Billy. Within the first couple of minutes, a visitor to an insane asylum dumps some clunky exposition.
Billy Lenz? It's the guy that killed his family at Christmas, back when I was a kid.
That lock's just to make him feel at home.
Right, because his mom kept him locked in the basement his whole life.
Turns out Billy used to live in the sorority house that this new generation of slasher fodder occupy, and they still give him a Secret Santa gift every year out of respect? We are shown his backstory in full flashbacks. How he was born with yellow skin like a little Bart Simpson, neglected by his mum, who along with her new man, killed his daddy. So he went to go live in the attic like the evil twin Bart Simpson, and eventually got fucked by his horny mum who then gave birth to his daughter/sister Agnes, and then started killing everyone? Yeah, let's leave him a present every year. Respect. With a tale like that, any attempt at being scary is null and void. Then again, it's pretty clear that the filmmakers, including old Bob Clark who returned as executive producer, weren't going for chills, but for thrills. These negatives aside, I was surprised at how entertained I actually was by this film. The modern pacing and over-the-top kills kept my interest levels at a steady standard, even while every member of the group besides Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Blonde Lady were bitchy and merged all into one. More than once a character was killed off and I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Why did her eye just get poked out? Wasn't her eyeball eaten 20 minutes ago? It also kind of ran out of steam by the end. The film hits its climax with the final girl battling against both Yellow Billy and Agnes, the princess of incest, before adding an extra climax in the hospital. By that point I was just knackered and trying desperately to cancel my optician's appointment. The basic plot is fairly faithful to the original, in that it's a bunch of leftover girls waiting around for Christmas, a phone rings and some bitches get bitched. It is what it is. The tone is wildly different of course, and even the famous phone gag is not played as often as you would think. There's a nice little nod and subversion to the closet kill in the opening too, that's alright. But what really stands out with this remake is the focus on Christmas itself. In the original, the Christmas setting isn't played up all that much. It's mainly there to give an excuse for the sorority house to be empty, or giving plausible doubt for why certain housemates are missing. They went home early. They aren't home yet? Oh, their train was probably delayed by the weather. The remake, on the other hand, will never let you forget that Christmas is a thing, even if they have to beat you over the head with a sack of toys. They can't go more than 2 bloody lines of dialogue without bringing it up.
Christmas?
Christmas.
Fucking Santa Claus?
They got a splog of Christmas tunes. You'll never want to hear the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy ever again, if you ever did. Shut the fuck up. Christmas tree, snow globe, Secret Santa, milk, cookies, nativity, ice skates, more milk, Christmas lights, candy canes sucked into a festive prison shank. I was genuinely surprised when Billy did not show up to the house dressed as a bloody Santa Claus. He only uses it as a disguise to escape the asylum. Perhaps the filmmakers had too much respect for Silent Night Deadly Night. Didn't want to step on their toes. After all, in this fucked up world, every day is Garbage Day! So yeah, on its own, this film is a fairly entertaining slasher, if a little dumb. It's the kind of film you'd put on at a teenager's sleepover. Enough energy and gore to shock you, with a couple spooks to scare the less horror-inclined guests. As badly received as it was, the Black Christmas name was clearly not tarnished enough not to warrant another version just 13 years later. Black Christmas returned in 2019, but now the stalked girls do not receive creepy phone calls. Instead, they get creepy texts. Well, that's bullshit. Getting a phone call is scarier now than ever before. Nobody calls you anymore. Phone anxiety is scarier than Bart Simpson. I said it. Speaking of Billy, there is no fucking Billy. It may be called Black Christmas, it may be the holiday season, it may be a group of girls in a sorority house. Honestly, the similarities stop right there. The wonderfully named Imogen Poots plays our protagonist Riley, who seems friendly but is a little reserved and nervous due to having suffered a traumatic sexual assault at the hands of a college frat boy. Meanwhile, her sorority sister is doing everything in her power to bring down the patriarchy. First, she got the bust of the college's troublesome founder removed, and now she is trying to get Riley's lecturer fired for his all-white course literature and foul attitude.
I still don't understand why you want to get him fired so bad.
Because he went totally crazy on me when all I did was ask why his syllabus has no women on it, queer people on it, trans people on it, people of color on it.
Yeah, but, I mean, are we just supposed to not study the classics?
Whose classics are they? Because they're not mine.
The rapist and his frat house are publicly humiliated by Riley and the girls during a staged performance. It starts off as a regular sexualized Mean Girls thing, before they shift the lyrics to call the boys out on their bullshit.
I didn't lead you on for goodness sake. I couldn't have 'cause I wasn't awake.
The performance is filmed and goes viral. Not long later, the sorority comes under attack from some Middle-earth rejects. It comes as no shock whatsoever to find there really is a patriarchal cult behind the whole plot. A group of stereotypical frat jocks from the humiliated group, led by Riley's teacher. Don't worry, I'm not going to start throwing out phrases like go woke, go broke. The director and co-writer, Sophia Takao, is quoted as wanting to make a film that flipped the whole voyeur objectification thing on its head. Given how much the previous Black Christmas films can be read in that way, I think that's actually a pretty sound mission statement in theory. In execution, it doesn't quite succeed. Many have accused the director of pushing an agenda at the expense of story and actually making a worthwhile movie. I have to kind of agree. The messages conveyed are so blunt and on the nose that it's incredibly distracting.
Not all men have power.
Did you just not all men me? Did you just...
Not all men are rapists, Chris!
Nobody is calling you a rapist.
Apply it with your man-hating.
Man-hating? What did I say that was so offensive?
Just calm down. We're trying to have a reference.
Calm down?
These are important, timely messages that should be discussed. This past year has been notorious for rethinking statues of glorified but controversial historical figures, for example. But there's no subtext. It's all text.
So sorry, you were right. I should have been fighting this whole time. Now's not really the time for I told you so, but I did tell you so.
I also don't want to be one of those guys comparing everything to Jordan Peele, but Get Out is a strong recent example of tackling current social issues in a head-on way. It's also engaging as a piece of entertainment. Instead, the film is just a bland shade of beige. The plot is just going through the most basic of motions, scares are telegraphed a mile away, there's rarely any visual flair whatsoever, dialogue is cringy instead of cute.
We've got to find her. We're aunts, Chris.
Outside of Riley, the characters are uninspired and I can't name them,
Chris.
because I've forgotten them as soon as the film was bloody over.
Chris.
Really, I hear you say? But who could forget Miss Writer's self-insert? Or Rudy Giuliani? And god damn it, this film came out in 2019. I do not want to ever see another goddamn scene in a butt-fucking classroom where a shit-stirring teacher gives another fucking lesson to bored students about something that will be thematic or plot relevant later on.
We're aunts, Chris.
Stop it, and while you're at it, stop doing the fake jump scare where a character grabs another character's shoulder. Who the fuck does that? Stop it. There's a couple neat things here and there. This victim accidentally likes a snow angel as she dies. The stage performance is actually quite cathartic, and Riley's journey in general is pretty good. But that's about it. It feels like Scream Queens without any of the fun. Even down to the bad guys' smooth, boring faces, it's all just a bit bleh. It was trimmed down to a PG-13 to give young girls interested in horror a movie that they can watch. That's fair enough, but it means even the horror scenes end up being as underwhelming as the rest of the film. In conclusion, whatever. It shouldn't really be called Black Christmas. And there we go. I will now run through my favourite aspects of the three films before making my final verdict. Though, if you watch this video, you already know what my opinion is, so shut up. Best villain. The original Billy easily gets my vote, Without even showing up on screen, his presence is always felt and is genuinely scary, while his phone manners leave a lot to be desired. Best ensemble. The original easily takes the vote again. Each cast member is likeable and well defined. In 2006, they're bitchy. In 2019, they're completely forgettable. Best final girl. Riley brings home the only point for 2019's Black Christmas. Dare I say, she almost wins by default. She is given a lot more focus as a protagonist than either Jess or Kelly. She has an arc that is relevant, realistic, and empathetic, and she holds her own reasonably well when shit hits the fan. Best overall kill. Kill for kill, on the whole, Black Christmas 2006 takes this one for me, by sheer body count alone. The kills are frequent, gory, and sometimes creative. There is a decent mixing of the original's kills with some ridiculous new additions. Best kill. My choice for the singular best kill from the series comes from the original. Barb suffers a nightmare about somebody in her room. She is comforted and drifts back into her final slumber. While Jess enjoys some carol singers downstairs, Barb is savagely murdered in her bed. The juxtaposition of the innocent children singing and this horrible death sent a chill down my spine, and the imagery stayed with me long after the film was over. Best film. Finally, my pick for the best film, surprising absolutely no one, is Black Christmas 1974. Let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with any of my choices, which you probably do.